Tom Mulroy, the coach of the Fort Lauderdale Strikers and ex-New York Arrow, one of the most entertaining players and one of the most entertaining interviews we've ever done. I hope you enjoy it. So Tommy, when we talk about the NASL and certainly when you were playing, that was the league. It was all the big names, and now here you are as president, running one of the best known brands in the world, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. Tell me a little bit about that, how that feels to have gotten to this point.
Right. Well, first of all, soccer's been my whole life. So, when you're 12 years old and you first get introduced to a soccer ball and Pele's your idol and you're running around, your front lawn with your friends playing a game and you're jumping in the air after you score a goal and, acting like you're Pele, to having had the pleasure of actually playing against Pele and having his jersey, is something special. And when I was growing up, the NASL was our premier division. It was pretty much the only professional soccer going on in the United States. And if you look at other countries, there's so many professional teams in a smaller area. So in a place like Holland, that's the size of Connecticut, they have a first division, a second division, a third division. It's like 40% of all males play professional soccer at some level or whatever the numbers are. And, now you have the United States that a lot of people, we are a country. It's not just that they think it's a country, but it is. But in essence, we really live in a continent, What's going on in Miami, Florida, and our weather and the climate and the type of play that you can have here in 80-degree weather with 100% humidity, and what's going on in Seattle, Washington, and the type of soft, wet feels they have, or what you're doing in New England or New York, as opposed to what's going on in San Diego or in Laredo, Texas.
Right.
3 time zones. So when your coach is planning out his training session and he's in England, he doesn't worry about 3 time zones or a complete change of climate. So, for example, in our league, we have Edmonton, and, today they're right at about 0. Okay, and down here in South Florida, we're having our NASL Combine, and I saw one guy in a long sleeve shirt because it dropped below 75. So, we have all of those differences in professional soccer here. So now, having grown up and that being the league, I've managed to keep the sport in my life my whole time. So.
Specifically, the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. It's just such a well-known name. Obviously, with the New York Cosmos now back in the league, that's really cool. And for us on the island, being able to potentially go 20 minutes, 30 minutes to go watch a professional game with the Cosmos, and you guys are going to be the first game, right, in August?
Yeah, we're going to be the opening opponent for the New York Cosmos.
And that's awesome, So, with the Strikers, some of the great players, you've had some of the greatest players in the world play for the Strikers.
Yeah, from a brand standpoint, if you're in Germany or you're in Europe or you're in South America, some of the best ever to live have worn our uniform. And actually, the other day here at the office, there was an older gentleman that was visiting Fort Lauderdale on vacation, and he wanted to see where Gerhard Mueller played. So I actually took him for a little walk around the stadium, and I showed him the locker room where Gerhard Mueller used to sit in his locker there. And so we got your Gerhard Muellers, your Georgie Best, Gordon Banks, Nana Kobias, still the 6th top scorer in the history of the World Cup and probably the highest scoring midfielder in the history of the World Cup, of all played here. And then other ones that aren't as internationally known, but it's been a brand that was there forever.
Right.
And, now with MLS, and MLS has 19 teams now, and they're going to add a 20th, we don't know where, what market, there's talk of it being New York, but our country is just so big that there's definitely room, in particular for the comeback of the North American Soccer League. And our mission is to be the best we can be in our markets, provide the highest level of play with the best entertainment we can do. And that's my objective as the president here, and I know it's going to be for the New York Cosmos in New York and on Long Island.
So your journey from, the New York Arrows and, really just from that indoor environment where there was a tremendous movement for the Arrows. There was a lot of support for a long time. you've had some great experiences in your playing career. What are some of your words of wisdom or guidance for young kids that maybe want to play at a professional level, or maybe even some of the kids that were here at the Combine that maybe are almost good enough but maybe not quite good enough? What are some of the things that you look for, and what would you recommend?
Well, first of all, I think that one of our biggest drawbacks as a developmental soccer country is that we tend to weigh how good the players are on how many wins we have or how many losses we have, as opposed to how good the player is and how they're developing and at what level and what problems they're solving on the pitch right there. So, for example, when I'm giving a coaching course, I always use this as an example. I got 2 junior high coaches, and one junior high coach, guy wins the championship every time, but he's got a player that's up front, and he knows he's faster than everybody else, so he tends to just whack it over the top and let that kid outrun everybody.
Right.
And when they're in junior high, that works, right? The challenge is, once they get up to the high school, now the kids are a little smarter, they've been trained, they have a little more experience. So the kids that have been being trained to just play to win instead of playing to become a better player doesn't always work at the finish line. So the 2 junior highs, okay, and again, this is a way, as opposed to judging just by how many wins you have or how many losses, you got the 2 junior highs that feed into the high school. The one guy wins a championship every year. The other guy, he goes 500, maybe does a little better than that. But his objective is not so much to win, but to teach his kids how to play, because he loves the game and he loves the passion. So his kids are now knocking the ball around. His kids are not allowed to just clear it out. They have to pass it out and bring the ball out of the back. His front runners are not just trying to outrun, they're coming back and checking for the ball. So what happens is, now when the 2 teams, their classes graduate from junior high and go to high school, not too many of the winning teams guys are making the varsity when they're younger, when the sophomore year or freshman year. Meanwhile, all of these kids are coming out of there and they're working their way right in the line because they've learned to become better players.
Right.
And all I can say for the parents of the kids is, don't worry so much about your wins and losses. Worry about how your kid is developing, because when the day comes that a college coach, whether it's UCLA, Indiana University, Harvard, whatever it is, if they're sitting in your living room, first of all, your kid can get into school academically. Okay, that's first. Second of all, they are not going to lean across the table and go, by the way, Billy's under 12 team, what was their record? Because he's just not going to care. All he's going to care about is, can you play? So we have to make our kids better players, and they have to solve those problems. And sometimes winning is not the best way to solve the problem. Sometimes playing correctly. So if a kid's in front of the goal, and again, the parents are out yelling, clear it, get it out, God forbid. The kid mishandles the ball, and they score. But what happens is, if he does mishandle it a little bit this time, the next time he goes, you know what, I shouldn't have controlled that to the inside of the pitch. I should have controlled it to the outside where I'm going to have the room. If the kid figures that out, he's going to solve that problem. So instead of the parents yelling, kick it, and poor coaches worked on bringing the ball out of the back all week, instead of them screaming that, the kid solves his own little problem. Whether it works or doesn't when he's U10, it's going to work as he gets older. So, I mean, the key is, winning is not the ultimate if you're the better player, okay? Solving your own players' challenges that makes you a better player is the thing. And it's all about the ball. Because at a young age, the more proficient you are with the ball, the more you're going to be able to do the tactics when you get older.
Well, you know what, you bring up a great point. We'll leave on this one is, so when you talk about being able to do whatever you want with the ball, you got to talk a little bit about the juggling at your experience at juggling and juggling at the Empire State Building and setting a world, like, was juggling just something always you did and you decided I'm really good at this and I just keep doing it, or did you first begin because it's such a tactically important thing to do to be able to control the ball, as you said?
Right. Well, what happened was, when I was younger, I never kicked the ball until I was 12 years old. And actually, in Rockland County, which isn't that far from Long Island, which is where I grew up, at the time, there was one youth team that played in Rockland County. was called the Spring Valley Boys team. And it was 12 and under. And I had just made the 12 because I'm a September, so it was my, and we had kids on the team that were 7 and 8. Because to get the 18 kids on the roster that we could travel into the German American League with, this was just at the time Long Island Junior was starting up. This was 1969, I think Long Island Junior 68 or 69, whatever. It's right in there. And literally in Rockland County, there were 18 children that played soccer. They came from different towns. From Clark, I lived in Spring Valley. They came from Clarkstown. They came from Nyack. And one dad was an old German guy that was a carpenter, and the other guy was a painter, and the other guy was a. And they were building Rockland County at the time. They played on the men's team that played in the men's league, and you got a discount if you had a youth team. So they made a youth team. Okay, so we traveled every weekend into the New York City, and then eventually, when there were teams on Long Island, we'd play in the State Cup, and we'd go, all the way out to Hicksville, right, to play.
Right.
So as that was starting, right, the coaching school, the United States Soccer Federation, did not have a coaching school or a license. They were just beginning. So this is like primitive. I mean, that's how old I am, I guess. But and at the time, a guy by the name of Detmar Kramer, who started our coaching schools, he said, look, the kids all need to be proficient with the ball, and one way you could do it is by juggling. Now, the closest kid that played on my team to me, one lived across the street, who was the kid that I went to practice with, and the other kids lived miles away. Nobody played soccer. Nobody knew what it was. So if you wanted to practice, you juggled. You could kick it at the net, which never had first of all, it was a football goal that had that, right? That you put a net on the back of, because nobody had goals then.
Right.
If you want, and you kick it and there was no net, so you go chase it. You kick it and you go chase it. So they showed, there was a video of Detmar Kramer. Actually, it wasn't a video. It was one of them taped, like a wheel of the video film, whatever. And he showed the juggling, and they said, if you want to be a better player, you got to juggle. Juggle 25 with your left, 20. So I was one of those kids that they said, become better with the ball, and I went into my yard and I trained on my own 40 hours a week, and I went to a wall and kicked it with my left foot, my right. So at least I was getting the hours or the amount of touches, the 10,000 rule with the backhand of tennis or with golf.
Yeah.
You touch it 10,000 times, you are proficient at it. So that's why I did the juggling. There was no one else to play with.
That's so funny. And now, what is your record? What is the record that you would set?
The record was I did 12,295 taps. I did it for promotion of one of my teams on top of the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
I actually dropped it at 12,000. I dropped it at 8,654 or something like that. Took a glass of water and then started again. I did 12,295. So for the day I did over 20,000, but the record was like 10,000, and so I flipped it over. So it was a long day on top of the Empire State Building. No King Kong was not chasing me, and I didn't do it outside. I did it in the observatory deck inside.
Yeah, with the wind it might have been.
With the wind, or if the ball went off, forget it. I mean, they wouldn't let me out there. So yeah.
Great.